Dr. Sampadanand Mishra ji, Director Sri Aurobindo Foundation for Indian Culture, is passionate about Sanskrit. He strongly believes that Sanskrit has immense potentiality to elevate the human consciousness to sublime heights. Dr. Mishra ji has spoken in various conferences, seminars, and literary and religious festivals, both in India and abroad, on Sanskrit, Indian culture, yoga, and education. In addition, as a devotee of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, he is familiar with their writings and feels comfortable in delivering lectures on philosophy and practice of Sri Aurobindo's yoga. He is also closely associated with the members of the School of Philosophy and guides their Sanskrit teachers. Dr. Mishra ji has launched the first ever 24-hour Sanskrit radio called Divya Vani and is single-handedly managing this entire content since its inception in 2013. In the year 2014, Dr. Mishra ji founded Sanskrit Bal Sahitya Parishad with the aim of creating, evaluating, and propagating children's literature in Sanskrit. The Government of India has conferred the President's Award on him for his outstanding contribution in Sanskrit. His qualifications include a postgraduate degree in Sanskrit from Utkal University, Bhubaneswar, MPhil in Sanskrit from Pondicherry Central University, receiving the gold medal for his excellent performance, and PhD from Utkal University on Sanskrit and the evolution of human speech. Dr. Mishra ji's achievement in his working life are also very impressive. The books written by him are fine example that showcase the greatness of Sanskrit. In addition, in his efforts to revive Sanskrit, he has also produced audio CDs and multimedia CD-ROMs, which are a delight to the senses. Some of the major projects he is currently working on are centrally creating innovative Sanskrit learning materials for the children, transparent system of root sounds in Sanskrit, Vedic art of multiple concentration in Sanskrit, and speech pathology. Sampachi, over to you. And this will be a divine experience. Thank you.
Namaskar. So we started our session in the morning about the 6 questions from Prashna Upanishad, and we saw the Rishi Pippalada answering the questions of the 6 young seekers. And I told you a little bit about the life history of how Pippalada was born. And when the 6 seekers came to ask him questions, they were not given immediate answers, but they were held for 1 year. So from all that we discussed in the morning, so there are few things which come up that in ancient system of education, what was expected of a disciple by the teacher was the first thing needed is a kind of readiness, the aspiration to know more and more and more. Along with this aspiration, the sincerity behind knowing more, knowing oneself, knowing the truth of everything, and being concentrated on, being focused on the supreme goal that one has set before oneself. And when people are asked all the 6 questioners to 6 seekers to be with him for 1 year, so it was not for any reason that he wanted to test them or he had some very busy schedule so he couldn't give time, but to allow the seekers to be with them, be in the solitude of the ashram, be more disciplined, more centered, more focused, so then they are ready to receive the higher knowledge, the profound knowledge. And this preparation is very much necessary. And it is here every student, every disciple by himself is put into test. So it is not someone else who is putting him into test, but he himself has to test himself by means of he has to check his level of humility, his level of patience, his level of silence in the mind, his how much control he has over his senses, how much control over he has on his speech. So all these things are necessary for preparing us for higher knowledge. And the knowledge that we are expected to gain is the knowledge which lies hidden deep within every one of us. So that is why it is known as the secret knowledge, the Rahasya Vidya, or the Brahma Vidya, or the supreme knowledge, which needs to be explored and which reveals itself to the seeker who sincerely seeks and makes all sincere efforts to know it by the power of his own concentrated energy. So, with this background, we also discussed that the topic for for this session was the mission statement for leading a right kind of life or a life beautiful. So, every one of us, we must have our mission statement. Like any organization, any institute, even any nation, any project that we create, so we first write the vision and mission document. So the vision and mission document is not only for the organizations and institutes or nations or any project, but each individual by himself or herself is an organization. So the first organization has to be within oneself. So how much one individually is organized within oneself. So if a person is more organized within oneself, he can contribute positively and strongly towards the greater cause of any organization or institute or nation. So in organized thoughts, in organized movements of our different parts of the being, they create problem not only at individual level but at the collective level also. So this is where, it was thought necessary by the seers and sages of ancient India to create this awareness among the people for writing the vision and mission document for leading the right kind of life or leading the life towards the higher realms or to live the higher purpose of life. So this is where we had given this assignment to all the participants, especially the children, to express your mission statement in one sentence. If all of you have done, then we can do one round of listening to the students who have written their mission statement. So can we?
Yes, Sarthak.
So my mission statement is that I want to grow and walk on the path of connection with my psychic being and grow with equanimity.
Beautiful.
Very beautiful.
Next.
Shashwat Vikram Singh.
Sir, I want to control my emotions and always be in a state of equanimity and connect with the divine.
Okay.
Very nice. Ridhima Rana 7B.
Ma'am, I want to practice purity in my heart and on my mind. I want to be polite to everyone.
Okay.
Ma'am, my mission statement is to grow in life and to achieve things while not harming others and also benefiting others so that we all grow.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Aditya. So, who else? Filza Khan, Sarthak Agarwal.
Ma'am, my mission statement is to understand and walk on the path of spirituality as well as serve my nation.
Very good.
Very nice. Very nice. Yes, Filza.
My basic vision is that I could help all the children to study in a smarter manner and in a better manner, and they could overcome all the difficulties that they face in life when it comes to studying or making a career in life.
Very nice. Krinali Nayak 8E.
Jai Shri Ram. My mission statement is to spread the Pavitra Gyan of Srimad Bhagavad Gita and Upanishads.
Okay, very beautiful. So we have to first become that Gyan and then spread it. Very beautiful. Saransh Mishra has shown a...
Ma'am, I just want to do that thing for which God has sent me.
Oh, you want to...
That is to live for Him and to spread that and to tell that our aim is to become His perfect instrument as we are His We are his manifestations only.
Very nice. Very nice. Yes. Anybody else would like to give an answer to the mission and vision statement of your life?
There's one Arna Trivedi.
Ma'am, I want to learn as much as I can and develop my inner being.
Learn as much as you can and develop your
Inner being.
very nice. All right. Kartikeya Chaudhary, 7D.
My mission statement is that I could become the perfect instrument of the divine and attain a stage in my life where I become content and don't ask for more.
Very nice. Okay, sir.
So, all right, we will go ahead with our discussion.
Yes.
Like what kind of inspiration that we can draw from the ancient Indian knowledge resources, which helps us in refining our mission statement. So, if we look at the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Dharma Shastras, or all the different documents that we have from the ancient India, and look at the vision of the seers and sages, we find that there is a highest goal that every human being has to achieve. So this goal has to be achieved individually. This goal also has to be achieved collectively. And what is that highest goal? So in a very short form, so when they were writing their mission statements or preparing this document, Sanskrit being a very precise language and the mindset itself being very precise, so it was given us in a sutra form. So for example, like they said, the highest aim of every human being is moksha. So mark this word moksha. And this word has been interpreted variously by various people, has been misinterpreted also by various people, and interpreted variously by various people. So now moksha, usually when we listen this word or when we want that the highest goal is moksha, the immediate idea, the immediate image which appears before everyone is moksha means some kind of departure from this world, leaving this body, or some kind of, like we do some kind of secret sadhana, so by which we, become completely dissociated from this world. And for achieving moksha, that is what is necessary. This kind of misunderstanding or misinterpretation of the word moksha we find very popularly spread all over. Now moksha is not something where one has to be detached from the world, dissociate oneself from the world, and do some kind of secret sadhana just to give up this world or depart from this body and then enter into some other world, unknown world, which we have no clue to. So that is what was not moksha when they prepared the document and gave to the humanity. What did they mean by moksha? So they meant by moksha is a liberation from all kinds of limitations that one has. So what kind of limitations that we have? If we look at ourselves, if we start analyzing ourselves, every aspect of our life, all the different dimensions of our personality, when we start looking at ourselves, we find that we are limited by many limitations. Our body has its own limitations. Our physical actions, all that happens through the physical has various limitations. All that happens through our emotional and sensational being has lots of limitations. Our mind is also very, very limited way. It works, though it is unlimited, it has an unlimited power, whether the physical or the vital or the mental. Every aspect of our being, every aspect of our consciousness has unlimited potential, unlimited power, but we have not yet realized that highest potentiality of each part of our being. So this is where we feel limited. So the solution which is given to us, the moksha means like to grow more and more conscious of oneself and tap into the hidden talents, hidden potentiality, and then make them manifest to their fullness. So then we realize the full capacity of our physical consciousness, the full capacity, the refined capacity of our vital consciousness, the full capacity of our mental consciousness. And at the same time, we grow conscious of that element within us, which is the master, which is the leader, which has the power to lead everything, which has the power to refine everything, which has the power to show the right path, right direction to the mind, the vital, the body, and then guide us on the right path, on the path of Shreyas. So, liberation, mukti from this limitation, so from this sasimata, was in a true sense was called the moksha. But this moksha, as it was understood, could not, I mean, they made this that this cannot be achieved just like that. There is no shortcut, there is no direct achievement of the moksha by any means. Like what was the experience, not just the vision, but the rishis, the seers and sages, they lived that kind of life, and they attained to moksha by going through the whole process, and then they described us the whole process. So now this moksha to achieve, whether individually or collectively, so it has to happen through a gradual evolutionary journey, by a progressive evolution, not by a, there is no shortcut, there is no direct achievement of moksha. One has to go through every experience, every phase of life, and then refining oneself step by step, and then getting ready for the realization of one's own ultimate goal of life. But in one sentence, one word, they set this vision and mission statement that moksha is the ultimate goal of human life. And in order to attain this moksha, one has to satisfy all the different kinds of different dimensions of personality. One has to become aware of the limitations, and then work out things in such a manner that one overcomes all these limitations and makes oneself free from all these limitations to experience and realize the highest potentiality that one has, and then utilize those for a greater enjoyment and the right enjoyment of the life before one attains to the moksha. So this is where they set this ideal called Purushartha. Purushartha means, the artha means the purpose. Look, the word artha means meaning, artha means purpose, artha also means money, artha also means the wealth that we have. It has various kinds of meaning. So Purushartha, in this word, artha means the purpose, the goal, the highest purpose, highest aim, highest goal of the Purusha. Purusha includes everyone, all beings. So Purusha means all beings. It is not man alone and then women are separated from here. So Purusha word is used in the sense of human beings. So every human being, it applies to every human being. So Purushartha, the highest purpose of life, they set this ideal and then explained that there are fourfold Purusharthas. In order to achieve this highest goal, which is moksha, so there are stages which they documented in this form, that artha, kama, dharma, moksha. So most of the times you will find it in a order like which it starts with dharma, then artha, kama, moksha. So here we put this order for our convenience, for our better understanding: artha, kama, dharma, and moksha. So these four explaining to us or indicating to the four different things to be achieved in our fourfold consciousness, fourfold aims that we have. Now, artha is something which meets our social economic need. Like we need, like when we are in this world, there is many things we need for our survival. We need money, we need a house to stay, we need food, we need Artha also means instrument, all the different kinds of instruments and tools which are needed for growing, say, money, growing food, growing all kinds of, like how do we satisfy our need, the physical need. So it refers to all our physical need, and Artha also refers to our physical consciousness. So everything which is needed for the physical maintenance of ourselves. So in a grand scale, if we are not looking at it at an individual level, say for a nation, so all the economic need, all the social need, all that is needed for the sustenance of a nation, all the people of a nation will come under this part, artha, and it cannot be ignored, it cannot be neglected. So we must take care of doing everything to satisfy the need, the physical need, instead of escaping it because it is creating limitation. So we should not abstain from doing something with this idea that okay, it binds me. So we have to overcome this bondage by working for it. It is not by escaping that we can become free from the bondage. So we escape from one thing, we are bound by another thing, because this victory has to be achieved within oneself. So that is why once Sri Aurobindo says at one place, like once you achieve a victory over a particular desire, so that gives more joy than satisfying the desire. So this victory has to be achieved by going through it. And another place Sri Aurobindo says that none can attain heaven without passing through the hell. So it is, heaven is not something that okay, in dream or we give some bribe to someone and then we reach heaven. So heaven has to be achieved within oneself. This victory has to be achieved within oneself, and for that we need to go through all kinds of experiences in the life. But there is a check. What is that check? That it has to follow the right, the rhythm. So everything has to follow this ordered truth. If the satisfaction is merely the satisfaction of our greed, satisfaction of our desires, then it multiplies and there is no end to the satisfaction. So when with this aim that we try to experience things because it is needed, and we look at all the needs and then satisfy our needs by following the dharma of everything, because artha also has its own dharma, kama also has its own dharma, dharma has its own dharma, and moksha has its own dharma. So on one side we put artha, kama, dharma, moksha, and as a whole dharma takes over everything because each one has its own dharma, and that dharma has to be followed, that dharma has to be satisfied. So the dharma of the artha has to be followed, not to be escaped, not to be neglected. So dharma of the artha has to be followed and satisfied. That need has to be there. One has to go through this experience, but in the dharmic way. So this artha refers to our physical consciousness. So all that we need for our survival, everything that is needed for the physical sustenance, but in the right way. Then comes the kama. So kama refers to our vital needs, our sensational, emotional needs, because it's a integral part of our consciousness. It cannot be ignored. So, but again, it has to be satisfied by the right, by the rhythm, by the dharma, because kama also has its own dharma. In Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna says that, like I am also kama. Now something we have some kind of bitterness towards kama. We say that like he is more of a kama kind of person. He has more kamana vasana. But Sri Krishna says I am also kama, but dharma aviruddha kama. He says kama is not good. Kama is necessary for our evolutionary progress. Kama is necessary, but which kama? Dharma aviruddha kama. So everywhere they have explained it in a clear language that what is needed for our evolutionary growth, for the attainment of the highest goal, that has to be attained to, that has to be satisfied. not to be neglected, not to be ignored, but in the right way. So it's a dharma aviruddha kama. Otherwise, it just becomes a kind of suppression, just ignorance. And anything which is suppressed, anything which is ignored or neglected, it will keep popping up whenever its time comes. So it has to be held within the consciousness and refined. Our physical being, all the kinds of movements. So for example, like when we are sitting, when we are doing any kind of physical movement, we an untrained physical has many unnecessary movements, and any kind of unnecessary movement is a wastage of energy. Any kind of unnecessary movement, whether it is a physical, vital, emotional, sensational, or mental movement, is unnecessary wastage of energy. So the advice is to have a check on anything which is an unnecessary movement, whether physical, sensational, emotional, mental, psychological. So we have to have control, we have to have check. And this in true sense was named as brahmacharya. Now brahmacharya has been misinterpreted, mistranslated as maintaining celibacy. But it is not only that, but it is just to have, how do we manage, how do we regulate, how do we control, and then how do we measure, in a measured way we manage our energy, all kinds of energy, physical, emotional, sensational, mental, psychological, spiritual energy, controlling the energy in a controlled way. So that is why hita, mita, the word mita is very, very important. Mita means measured, mitahara. So when we take food, it has to be measured, and it also has to be hita. Hita means conducive, what is good for our progress. It may differ from person to person depending upon one's own temperament, but one has to see for oneself that whatever intake, whatever food one takes is hita and is mita. So this controlling, this like measured way of living is what refines our movements. So that is where it is necessary that we have to train ourselves, train every part of our being, every part of our consciousness. So that is what is the aim of education. Like when you are studying more of Sri Aurobindo and the mother, so you must be hearing integral education, which means like every aspect of our being has to be refined, trained, and then raised to a higher level. So then it is controlled, it is rhythmic, it is right, and it is full of energy, it is full of purity, it is full of sincerity, and it is full of dynamism. And then it is more in a sense of refined and controlled action of all parts of our being. So that's where the education is needed for the body, education is needed for our emotions and sensations, education is necessary for our mind, education is necessary, the higher kind of education, spiritual and supramental education is necessary for at the higher level. So this is where we journey. So artha and kama. Then when artha is referring to our physical need, physical aspect, kama is referring to our emotional, sensational aspect, where there also, like, the advice is that it has to be dharma aviruddha kama. So all the kama has to be satisfied, but following the dharma. This is the check. This is where if dharma is removed, then nothing can help us becoming free from our limitations. So dharma has been given the prominence, the priority, that whatever we do, we have to check whether it is following the dharma or not. But then we will discuss about the dharma little later, and what exactly it means, like how do we follow the dharma. Then after the artha and kama, so it then comes the dharma. Now here dharma is our ethical, moral, religious, psychological need. So how do we lead a life of mental purity? How do we lead a life with all our moral values at the high level? Moral, ethical, social values, our mental, our religious values, our deeper values. So this is where the dharma refers to, in this sense, to the mental education, to the mental level of our consciousness. And so we see the physical need, the vital need, and the mental need. They have to be satisfied by following the dharma. Dharma overrules. And then comes the moksha, which is our spiritual need. So this is the evolutionary journey, and this is actually the vision and mission document, which is just said like Chaturvidha Purushartha, Dharmartha Kama Moksha. So this is what it says, but it takes the whole lifetime, and a program has been given to us in this small, by these 4 words. A program has been created for us to live, to do the sadhana for the entire life, and then become free from our limitations and attain to the highest aim of our life. So artha, kama, dharma, moksha, the physical need, the vital need, the mental need, and the spiritual need, they have to be satisfied, they have to be taken care of. But following the dharma, following the right, we take it forward. But now we come to the major question: if dharma has to overrule, if dharma has to be attached with, like it has to be dharma artha, dharma kama, dharma dharma, dharma moksha. If dharma has to rule, the dharma, what does the dharma mean? Now dharma can be interpreted in various ways. Now the one thing is, like anything that which sustains us, nourishes us within, and then helps us moving forward, gives us the support, is the dharma. So that is why dharanat dharma iti ahu. So they say that because it sustains, it holds us. So if the dharma is not there, now look, a tree has to grow from the ground and then stand erect. So it has its own dharma. Now it is the dharma of the earth, dharma of the ground, to hold the tree. Otherwise it will fall. If this dharma is not followed, no tree can stand on the earth. So the tree has its own dharma. Every creature, everything, all that is manifest, all that is created, all that is there in this creation. The man has its own dharma. The bird has own dharma. Each species has its own dharma. Then each one within that species also has its own dharma. Like all human beings have a general dharma, but there is also specific dharma which we call the swadharma. Like this dharma, one has to become aware of. First, one has to know what my dharma is. So it is our dharma to grow conscious of our own dharma, our own swadharma. So first we must make all efforts to find out, like, what is my dharma. That is also the another greater purpose of life. Most of us, we do education, we go to school, we study, we pass out, we do all kinds of things, all kinds of success we achieve, but we have hardly asked this question, but what is my dharma? Why am I doing all these things? Why am I studying? Why am I doing a job? Why am I earning all these things? Why am I managing this whole family? Why am I doing? What is my dharma? Is it in consonance with my dharma? Is it in consonance with the dharma at the individual and the collective level? And maximum cases, or 99%, you can say that it is not in consonance with, because we have never asked this question. We have never grown conscious of this. We are not aware of it. We are leading a life which is robotic, mechanical, gatanugatika, and with no awareness, no consciousness in it. So this is what when we analyze ourselves ruthlessly, we will find it out. So that is where the ancient Indian seers and sages, they did one more thing, that they attached a kind of ritual with everything. Like you are getting up in the morning, there is a ritual enjoined for you. And these rituals are meant more for the people who are leading a mechanical and habitual life, because they may forget. They may follow the train of their emotions, train of their mental thoughts, train of their physical movements without having any kind of awareness. So therefore there is a ritual enjoined. So when you get up, you should pray this. So then it becomes a reminder for you that you are not just getting up in a habitual manner or going to take bath in a habitual manner, taking your food in a habitual manner, or even brushing your teeth in a habitual manner. So if you look at the ancient text, there is a ritual for every aspect of the being, whatever you do, starting from getting up, all kinds of things that we do. Even we are talking to someone, going for a meeting, studying our text, or doing puja, or anything, for everything, even kindling the fire for in the stove before we cook, or the put the chawal in the dish, there is a ritual enjoined to it, because at every step it reminds us to become aware of it and offer. Without this offering, the life has to be, your life is the right kind of life when there is offering at each level and at each moment. So it is a yajna. In this maha yajna, we have to keep offering ourselves. So that is the dharma. Now we ask this major question, that why am I here? Why am I born? What is the purpose of my life? What this world is going to be benefited by me? And even most of the times we feel that, many people feel that, why all these questions are necessary to ask? Just do your work and then continue with your study or your work. Why do you ask all these questions? These questions should arise like when you are retired at a later age, you are vanaprasthi. So all these questions should come during that time, but by that time we have already wasted much of our life. So then it is just a consolation that, okay, I do something, I do the Parayanam of Bhagavad Gita, or I attend this satsang, and then I do little bit of philanthropic work, and I have contributed something to this organization, that organization, or do some Nishkam Seva. Though we call it as Nishkam Seva, but nothing happens truly in a Nishkama form, because there also the karma is involved, because I do it just to satisfy my ego, just to satisfy my vital, or some kind of mental decision that I have taken to satisfy that or fulfill that. So we do this, and we do so many sankalpas also unnecessarily. So I remember, like I heard the Swami Mukundanandaji narrating this story. So he said, like in a gym, immediately after the new year, so one boy goes to the gym. So on the first day he goes, he returns, because the gym owner says that, sorry sir, it's full. So he continues up to like January 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th. So then he says, already 7 days passed and I have not been able to attend to your gym even for once. Every time it is full. He says that, wait for another 3-4 days, you come after 13th or 14th, so the gym will be all like empty, because this is just new year resolution, people, that yes, this year I will definitely, I'll not miss one day gym, and it lasts only for 10-15 days. So where is the sankalpa shakti? So if that sankalpa shakti is not, that dridhata is not there in the sankalpa shakti, we are not able to achieve the highest goal of our life, because it is a mentally formulated sankalpa that one does, but one has not really felt the need of that within oneself, because one is not aware of oneself. So that is why, again, the highest goal which has been set, has been explained again and again, is that in a very simple language they say that when the spirit descends into the matter, we know this whole story of creation, that the supreme reality, which is one, which is alone, he descends, he becomes, he extends himself, he expands himself to become this multiple world, or everything in this creation. And while expanding, while becoming everything in this creation, he doesn't do it just like that. Although for him it is Leela, but behind this Leela, behind this play, behind his enjoyment, there is a greater purpose. So if everything is born, if I am born in this world, I have taken a finite shape, my soul has taken a finite shape, has entered into this, like matter, this body. So if I have come to this material world, if the spirit to which I belong has become this matter, so the spirit descends to become the matter with a purpose. It is not without a purpose that the spirit descends into the matter or become the matter. And the highest aim of life at an individual level for every individual is to explore and discover what is that purpose for which the spirit has become me, or the descended in this form. That infinite has taken this finite shape. Why? So that is our dharma in order to find, and this is a question which one has to carry within oneself all the times. Sarveshu kaleshu. All the times one has to carry to find out, unless and until, until one has really discovered it, really one has explored it. And discovery of that means then comes the fulfillment. So one has to explore, one has to discover. Discovering means one has found it, one has become aware of it. But merely becoming aware of it is not the ultimate thing, but one has to fulfill it. So exploration, discovery, and fulfillment. This is our dharma. So we have to explore, like why, and then we have to discover, means like we have to find out, and then we have to find out that purpose, very purpose, and become aware of that, carry that within ourselves, and then do everything which is necessary for the fulfillment of that purpose. This is what is our dharma. And for that reason, in our shastras, while creating this document for us, there is a full-fledged manual which has been given to us. How do we satisfy this artha, kama, dharma, moksha need, the physical, vital, mental, spiritual need of ours, and become free from all the bondages or limitations in order to experience and utilize that infinite energy within ourselves. So for that reason, it has been shown, because there is always a risk of deviating from the path of dharma. But the injunction is that not to deviate even slightly from the path of dharma, because it is not an easy way to walk on the path of right. Simply, the reasons are many. Reasons are many because gahana karmanu gati. So the gati of karma is gahana, very dense. It's very, very difficult to find out what is karma, what is akarma, what is vikarma, what is dharma, what is adharma. Because the definition of dharma cannot be a strict, rigid definition. It has never been. It's always flexible. It differs from place to place. It differs from time to time. It differs from person to person. So sthana, kala, patra, bhedena. What is dharma to me may be adharma for another one. What is dharma in a particular place will be adharma in another place. What was dharma 100 years before is adharma now can become again dharma after 100 years. It keeps changing its space. So this change one has to note, but at the same time one has to become aware. But what is that changeless element within all these changes, or brings these changes and holds all these changes? That is where we need to grow more and more aware of. So the dharma, it keeps changing, and we have to, and then injunction is we have to follow the dharma. Now if you look at the dilemmas in what has happened in some of the ancient texts, so recently you must have seen this Mahabharata, which was shown on the television again after so many years. So it refreshed so many things. It also gave us, like when we looked at it, say 20-25 years before, we drew some kind of meaning and inspiration from it. But when we are looking at it again after 25 years, we have evolved. Many things have changed. We draw different kinds of meanings and different kinds of senses and different kinds of inspirations, higher inspirations from the same character, same events, and same episodes. But we look at it, we have a very fresh and newer kind of understanding. So I'll give you some examples that, like in the Mahabharata, you must have heard it when Arjuna goes to Yudhishthira, and Yudhishthira is blaming the Gandiva of Arjuna. So now here it is a dilemma. Now immediately Arjuna says that to Yudhishthira, that since you have blamed my Gandiva, I am going to kill you because this is what is my pratignya. And Krishna was present there. Krishna says, I am amazed by your, like in your family. So everyone makes promise, pratignya. Why do you all Bharatvanshis make so much of pratignyas? Bhishma makes pratignya, Yudhishthira makes pratignya, Arjuna. For every little thing there is a pratignya which is made. Then they don't know how to handle the situation. Now here is a dilemma that Arjuna has taken a pratignya that anyone who insults his Gandiva will be killed by him. Now here is a situation. Yudhishthira is asking Arjuna, why have you come to me when the battle is on? You were supposed to fight with Karna now. You are in my camp and you are coming to me. So maybe like you have no capacity to fight with Karna. You have run away from Karna. So fire onto your Gandiva. Now here the dilemma is that Arjuna says that what will happen to my words? I have to kill Yudhishthira. And now if he kills Yudhishthira, and in that critical situation, when the battle is on and Yudhishthira is the king, not only king, he is his elder brother. So one has no right to kill one's own elder brother. One has no right to kill one's own, the king for no reason, for one's own selfish reason. So he is going to incur a greater papa, greater sin if he kills Yudhishthira. But if he doesn't kill, then he is untrue to his own words, which is also another kind of error, another kind of mistake. But what is to be done? What is the solution? Now Krishna comes here and then says that, look, Arjuna, that killing, because now if you look throughout the Mahabharata, Krishna gives extended definition of dharma, extended rules. There is no rigidity. If you look at Ramayana, everyone is rigid. Dasharatha has said, Rama has to go, he will go without question. So the mindset during the Ramayana is a rigid mindset. It's simple, it follows its path. But during the Mahabharata, you will say that the mind is flexible. It is more complicated, but it has its own flexibility. But it always thinks twice. It questions, it analyzes, it extends the rule. This extension of rule is not possible in the Ramayana setting. So this extension is possible. So Krishna says that, look, by killing, it does not mean that you kill someone physically. The death happens at various levels. So apamana is a death to any elderly person or any revered person. Apamana means insult. So if a revered person is insulted, that insult is equivalent to death. So instead of killing Yudhishthira because he has insulted you, you insult him. Then he says, how should you insult him? That also is shown. He said, like when you are addressing your elder brother, addressing the king, so it is a rule that you should address saying that aap, tatra bhavan, tatra bhavanta, address in plural. He says that instead of addressing him in plural, you address him in singular. Like, unko aap mat bolkar tu bolo. And that becomes a bigger insult, and then that is death for him. So this is how Krishna brings a solution to, and he extends this whole idea of dharma or pratignya, or what is meant by death, or what is meant by killing. So now what happens? Dharma not only changes its faces, but dharma also becomes, the definition of dharma gets renewed along with the evolutionary process. As we evolve more and more, the whole meaning of dharma also changes. So accordingly, the Shastras also have to evolve along with our evolution, and new Shastras have to be created, new injunctions have to be created. This is where we have failed in creating our new Shastras. So what has happened is the Shastras which were created so many thousands of years before, so we very rigidly follow the injunctions without questioning the Shastras because we are told that we should not question the Shastras. But the Shastras, we have not taken care of the evolution of the Shastras. But then these are all debatable things. So traditional Orthodox people will ask that, like this is not right, that we have to question the Shastras, like whatever is there in the Shastras, we have to strictly follow it. And then just letter by letter, whoever questions the Shastra, it will be, is not the right person. He is adharmi. He is not doing the dharma. So now with dharma, there are layers and layers and layers of questions. So that is why it is not easy to understand the subtleties of the dharma and adharma. But then what should we do? Now the simple formula which has been given to us, that look, whatever leads you towards the achievement of the highest goal, and whatever leads you in the right way, gives you the joy in a higher sense, not drawing any kind of sensational joy, being excited, being sensational, being emotional, but joy in true sense. It is the joy of the heart, it is the joy of the antaratma. So when that happens, and then one follows that path by being conscious of that, yes, I am not deviated from the path. I am following the right path. But questions may come, how do I know whether I am following the right path or not? Again, a very difficult, challenging thing, whether we are following the right path or not. But as we grow more and more conscious of ourselves, grow more and more conscious of our highest aim, and then we live harmoniously, we organize our life's action around that central highest aim, then slowly the path will be shown to us. So anything which leads us towards the parinama. In parinama, it becomes the amrita. It gives us that lasting joy, lasting happiness, shashwati shanti, or shashwatam sukham. That is what is the path of right, which is known as shreyas. Anything which is just like gives joy to our senses, we draw maximum sensual pleasure from anything initially, and then we feel that okay, this is the path, the other path is difficult because there is no joy, because the senses do not draw maximum joy, sensual pleasure is not allowed on that path, it doesn't happen. So we feel that if we need to enjoy the life, we must follow the path of prayers. So but the Gita says in a very clear language, the path of prayers one can follow, one is allowed to follow it, but one has to see the end result. So the end result has been fixed. So if one follows the path of prayers, the end result is pariname vishopamam. If one follows the path of shreyas, the end result is pariname amrutopamam. That amrutam is the lasting happiness. That amrutam is the shashwati shanti, the shashwata sukha. So this is where, so now I think I have to take leave for 5 to 7 minutes to go for another program. I just switch off my video and audio, and then I'll come back after 5-7 minutes to take it further. So meanwhile, I request Anjali ji who can take it forward, ask them questions, or continue the interaction. So or invite questions from others. So then we are ready with all the questions which we can start answering after I come after 5 to 7 minutes.
So you were going to give us some homework to the students in this 5 minutes.
Yeah, the homework that I had thought is this assignment of mission statement, writing mission statement, which we have already done. Now we can invite the questions. Then we are ready for the questions, and then we will continue answering them after the 5-7 minutes.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Dampaji. Thank you. So children, if you have any questions, you can start typing the questions out, and or you can ask and we can write down. It would be better if you type them, then they're all together. But you're almost being able to follow the session today, right? It's a little difficult, but Had everybody heard about Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha? Who all had earlier heard about Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha? The 4 pillars of Dharma. Come on, students, who all had heard about Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha earlier? Show me a thumbs up. Archana ma'am had. Sudhir Tiwari sir had. Varsha ma'am had. Who else had heard about Prabha? Ratna Sen sir had heard about it. Yoshita, Shashwat, Vikram Singh, Pragya, Sarthak Mishra, 2 hands up. Okay, so would you like to share, Sarthak Agarwal, would you like to share what you understand by Dharma, Artha, Kama and Moksha? Would you like to? Show me a thumbs up if you would. Okay, can we unmute Sarthak Agarwal? Anybody else would like to speak about it? Just keep your thumbs up. After Sarthak, you can tell us about it, what you understood. Yes, Sarthak, where are you?
What should I tell about?
What have you understood by Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha?
I'm gonna answer after 2 minutes, ma'am, please.
Yeah, sure. Somebody else would like to talk? Aditya is raising his hand. Aditya Mishra. Can we please unmute Aditya Mishra?
Ma'am, dharma is the right thing to do. Like, ma'am, it is the right thing to do in situations. Arth is the, ma'am, money we call resources that a person has during his lifetimes. Kama is the sensual pleasures of a person, the pleasures of the skin, and moksha is, ma'am, moksha I cannot understand properly. It's a very complex topic.
Yes, very nice, very nice. So, dharma is the right way to follow anything.
Yes,
and there is a dharma of artha. And artha is not only money, it is all the satisfaction that one's physical being.
All the material pleasures.
Material needs, not pleasures, material needs of the physical body. And artha is all the vital needs, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. And dharma is the right way of, and dharma is, there is a dharma of artha, dharma of kama, dharma of dharma, and
Yes,
dharma of moksha. And he explained moksha very beautifully. He said that moksha is understood as something that will happen after you die and you will go into some other space. But he said that is not moksha. Moksha is when one is alive and one has got liberated from one's limitations.
Yes, ma'am.
Then one is called a Jivan Mukta.
Ma'am, like Rishi Agastya was almost connected to God during the Rigved when, ma'am, he had the Samvad with Indraji.
Yes, so many of them that even while we are alive and we are able to get beyond our limitations, the limitations of the physical, limitations of the vital, limitations of the mental, when we have gone beyond the limitations, then we have moksha even while we are alive. It's called Jivan Mukta, and that's the moksha that Sri Aurobindo talks about. Right? Acha, Sarthak Mishra wanted to say something. Yes, Sarthak?
Ma'am, from earth, kam, dharma and moksha, I understood that earth means the purposes and the works that a person has to do, and it has another meaning, that is wealth. And calm means the sexual emotions and feelings that a person has. Dharma means the rhythm or the right path that one has to follow. And moksha means getting liberated from the limitations of one's body. Like if we are in our senses and we can directly connect to God, then we can say that we are in a state of moksha. And there are all these in all these 4 things, dharma goes with all of them. Like there is a dharma of earth, dharma of kam, dharma of dharma, and dharma of moksha.
Very nice. Very well summed up. So Sampatji has come back. So let us give the mic back to Sampatji.
Yes, so I have heard the questions, and then it is wonderful that some of you have students, some of you have noted it nicely, and then I was hearing one question that the complicated part was the moksha part, and so please excuse me, I have 2 earphones. on one earphone, my attention is on the other program which is going on, and then here I'm doing this program. So I'm splitting myself into two. I will not miss anything, that you can believe. So now the moksha part, if we try to understand in the traditional sense, moksha is something which is out of body. That is a sense that many people carry, that out of body is the moksha, but that is not the intended meaning when we look at very closely to the meanings which are given by the ancient seers and sages, and then put it in the context of artha, kama, and dharma. So now moksha is a liberation from all our limitations. So I explained it in the earlier session also, before I took the break, that moksha is liberation from the limitations. So when we are born in this finite body with lots of limitations. So our body has its limitation, our prana has its limitation, our mind has its limitation. So these limitations means like we are bound by many things. So because we are bound, so every human being living in the ordinary consciousness, living a habitual mechanical robotic life, is termed by the ancient seers and sages as pashu. Pashu means like bound, a bound consciousness, animal consciousness. With all our anything which happens, like anger comes, we immediately execute like the animals without giving any thought to it, without stepping back. The greed comes, the desire comes. We are running after all kinds of things without giving any thought, without any awareness of it. We simply execute it the way the pashu, the animals do. So giving ourselves or leading our life as per instincts, the animal instincts, is the bondage for us. We are bound by this limited, this animal consciousness is the limited consciousness. So it is from this consciousness, limited, bound consciousness, we have to make ourselves free. We have to transcend to the next level. And the next level is the man human. From man animal to man human, we have to rise. And that man human level was known as Veera, Arya, Veera, Shura, the heroic man, the man human, who is free from all weaknesses. So all our limitations create all kinds of weaknesses. So the man who lives in the animal consciousness, lives a habitual mechanical robotic life, is also a weak man. He has lots of weaknesses and he has no control over himself. So he gives himself to the weakness because he is killed by his own weakness, and then suffers, draws some kind of sensual pleasure, but then puts himself into trouble and then keeps suffering. So this man animal, the man, the heroic, the man animal, the pashu, has to become man human. But that is not the ultimate aim. He also has to make himself free from this man human level and then become the man divine, the divya. So pashu, veera, divya is the stages of our evolution. So ultimate aim to attain to divyatva, the man divine. So to live, to feel the divinity, to regulate every aspect of our life by that divine life, because our aim is to establish the divine life on the earth and live the divine life. So we have to make ourselves free from these weaknesses, this bound, limited consciousness, phase by phase, and then attain to the unlimited power which is available to us in our man divine phase. So moksha means one has to make oneself free from all kinds of boundaries, all kinds of limitations. So nothing binds, nothing holds us in on like at one place. So that's how we move from one level to the other level, and then enter into that phase of life where we have unlimited energy, where we have unlimited power to execute in the right way, by following the path of light and truth and the higher dharma. So we not only live our individual life, also we help the collectivity to move along with us towards that higher aim. So that is why it is said that those who are santas, those who have crossed this phase, those who have made themselves free from the pashu, has become man human, or have attained to the level of man divine, they are called the santas. And parvati kritya nityam, paraguna paramanun parvati kritya nityam, nija hridi vikasantah santi santah kiyantah. So it says, even though they find it mind very very tiny good quality in others, they don't look at the bad qualities and the all the limited aspects of anyone. They find out what is that greatest possibility, what is that light, what is that truth, what is that good quality in others, and they magnify this into the size of a mountain. So that is what the work they do. So they not only have attained to that, so it is said that they themselves have crossed this ocean, and they also help others in crossing this ocean. So because they have made themselves free from this boundary, free from this limitation. That is what is the real meaning of moksha when we look at in the grand scheme of dharma, artha, kama, moksha. I hope it makes sense and it makes clear. And as long as we are bound by this animal consciousness, what happens? Let's look at one example. Now what happens when we are bound? We are bound, truly bound like pashu. Let's take the example of donkey. There was one man who was going with two donkeys, and he had to take bath, and he had only one rope. So he tied one donkey with one rope, and then he had no rope to tie the other donkey. So there was a nearby ashram. He went, and then he asked the sadhu who was living in that ashram, "Can you give me a rope? I will bind my donkey, and then I will go and take my bath." So the sadhu explained to him that you don't need a rope to tie the donkey. You just go and then do the drama of tying him. Like the donkey sees that you are tying him. He said, "Will it work?" He said, "It will work perfectly." So that is what is the bound consciousness. Even though that the donkey is not really bound, he just like made the action of tying him, and the donkey didn't move even 1 inch. He went and took bath and then came there. The donkey had not moved even 1 inch because it is bound. So that is what is the limited bound Pashavik consciousness does. Then what happened? The next phase of the story is that the man had to go, move on. So he untied the first donkey and moved. And then after going some steps, he found that the other donkey is still standing there. He said, "But why this donkey is not moving yet? Maybe this sadhu has done some kind of tola topa or some kind of mantra to keep this donkey there." So he went to the sadhu and then told him that, "What did you do to the donkey? It's not moving." He said, "But did you tie it?" He said, "Yes, I tied it before I went to take bath." Then what happened? Then he said, "It didn't move. It was there. But now what is the problem?" He said, "Now I want to move on. I am moving on. The donkey is looking at me, but it's not moving." So he said, "Did you untie the donkey?" He said, "No, but I have not tied him with any rope." He said, "You did the drama of tying him. Now again you have to do the drama of untying. Then only it will move." So he went and then he did this drama of untying him. Then the donkey moved. So this is what happens, that we are bound as long as we live in our limited bound consciousness, this habitual robotic consciousness, ordinary consciousness, and live in the physical mind, physical consciousness. Then what happens? Everything becomes habitual. Even though things are not there, we take it to be there. Like if something is not truly binding us, we feel that yes, we are constricted, we are bound, we are limited. What can we do? What can I do? See, most of the times we put this question, what can I do? What power I have? I can do it. I can't do anything. But look at, there are santas, there are great souls who have done wonderful things out of nothing. Take the example of Madan Mohan Malaviya ji. Out of nothing, he created the greatest university of the world. He had no money. By begging one rupee, two rupees. So moving from here to this place to that place, he could create the Banaras Hindu University, the greatest university of that time, out of nothing. So this is what, that is why very aptly he is called a Mahamana. So what happens is, like, if one is bound by the limitations and keeps asking question that what can I do? Can I really do something? Do I have that power? Then as long as we keep asking this question that I am weak, I am bound, I cannot do anything, then we can never progress. So to make ourselves free from this very thought of that I cannot do anything or what can I do anything, is also a part of moksha. That we have made ourselves free from this whole limited knowledge, limited understanding of that I cannot do anything. I am durbala, I am ashakta, that I am incapable, I am weak, that I cannot do anything. Then we become killed by our own weakness, by our own incapability, and never we get up for doing anything. So that is what happens. And when we say the moksha, to make ourselves free from all these limitations, in a practical sense, this is what is the meaning of the word moksha.
Pramini ma'am, would you like to ask? Ma'am is saying, please explain, when we are in yoga, in every action and thought, when we are joined to the divine in every action and every thought, is that the state of moksha?
It can lead towards moksha. It is a preparation for the moksha. It may be moksha from various other things, because we are already on the right path. We have made ourselves free from many weaknesses, but still we are in the process of attaining the highest goal, which is to be completely identified with the unity of our consciousness. So once that unity of consciousness is attained, that is what is known as the highest moksha. This is a preparation, and this is necessary that we be on the path of yoga or in yoga in order to attain to this highest moksha, which is the complete identification with the unity of consciousness, which is our true source.
Pramini ma'am, I hope your question has been answered.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Very beautiful. And this is what Isha Upanishad is all about. This complete identity with that oneness and unity. So Sparsh Kaushik is asking, sir, what is the difference between good evil and bad evil?
Good evil and bad evil. Okay. So evil is evil. So how do we say it is good evil and bad evil? But at the same time, we can see, depending upon various contexts, the evil can also become good, and the bad also, the good also can turn to be evil. And we have plenty of examples in the happenings of the past and the happenings in the present also. Like we see in our day-to-day life, like how a curse becomes the boon and a boon becomes the curse. So contextually it differs. For example, like Arjuna was cursed to become a eunuch or impotent, but it was a curse but turned to be boon during the Ajnatavasa. So that curse was some kind of evil or some kind of adverse force which is attacking to Arjuna, or because of some kind of bad deed or whatever reason. So he was given this curse, but it turned out to be something good for him. So in our day-to-day life also, we keep experiencing, if we mark, we are aware of that, many times the good turns out to be very bad and the bad turns out to be very good. So contextually we can see what is good evil and what is bad evil.
Arna Trivedi is asking how to sort what is dharma and adharma.
What is so that is what is a very, very difficult and challenging thing, to see what is dharma and what is adharma. So the reason, the simple explanations which are given, say for example, we take some practical guidelines from the Shastra to understand what a dharma is. So there is a beautiful verse which says, Satyam bruyat, priyam bruyat, ma bruyat, satyam apriyam, priyam cha na anrutam bruyat, esha dharma sanatana. This is also dharma. What is sanatana dharma? It says, Satyam bruyat. You must speak the truth. This is dharma. But how do we know whether my speaking of the truth is helping or not helping? We cannot say that truth always will help. There are truths and truths and truths. Various truth can manifest in different forms. So this is where, like there is a beautiful story about the Rishi Kaushika. So when he used to speak truth always, but finally he was sent to hell. It's story. We take it on a story basis, not becoming too much concerned about heaven and hell in a literal sense. So he was finally, his speaking truth didn't yield any good result for him, but his entire life he spoke the truth. Now when he was he asked this question for getting justice. He said, I have never spoken a single lie. I have spoken all the times truth, but why I have this injustice is for me? Why am I deprived of enjoying the heavenly bliss? Now the explanation which is given to him, it says it's good that you have spoken the truth. You have taken a sankalpa to speak the truth, but you don't know how to speak the truth. So now he was explained also, like it happened one day that a group of the what you call the robbers who came, and they were searching for another group of people to kill them, and they came and they were hiding themselves in the ashram of that Kaushik, or behind the Kaushik ashram. So when the robbers asked the whereabouts of this group of people they were searching for, so Kaushika indicated, because he thought, why should he hide? Because he has been always speaking the truth. Then this group of robbers went and then they killed this whole group. He said, but you speaking of the truth didn't help in any manner. It caused harm to others. So that is why it is said, Satyam Bruya, Priyam Bruya. It has to give, end result of speaking truth has to be good, has to help in our progress, in our journey. It has to be pleasant. Ma Bruya Satyam Apriyam. So never speak the truth which brings unpleasant result or which is unpleasant. So Satyam Bruyat, Priyam Bruyat, Ma Bruyat Satyam Apriyam. Then also it says Priyam Chana Anrutam Bruyat. Not that something which brings good result, but at the same time it is falsehood. It is the path of the falsehood, or it is adharma or asatya. That also you should not do. So this is how we have a very flexible and very what you call very comprehensive definition of what satya is, what dharma is. Now, how to speak the truth, the art of utilizing the truth, art of speaking the truth, the art and science of walking on the path of the truth, also we have to know the truth doesn't have one face. So truth, to speak the truth is dharma. So that is why one has to have the viveka buddhi to decide. One has to grow viveka buddhi within oneself to decide what is helping individually, what is helping collectively, and at the same time, whatever brings harm individually, collectively, what doesn't serve the greater purpose is also adharma. So sometimes outwardly something may look like adharma, but if it is serving a greater purpose, then it will be considered as a dharma. So that is exactly which is explained to Arjuna when he asks that why so many people will be killed in this yuddha. Why are you engaging me in this ghora karma? What dharma are we going to yield? What good result are we going to yield by fighting this battle? Now Krishna says that you are looking at it from your own individual perspective, because you look at your own people will be killed, your own things will happen, and these things will happen. But you have to look at the greater purpose of the dharma, because you are not fighting just for saving your family or your thing. The greater purpose, because it is a fight against the adharma and for the establishment of dharma. So similarly, the Kansa also asks Krishna that why you had to kill me. What is my mistake? Because there was so much of injustice which was done to my mother, so much of injustice which was done to me. So where was the justice? Where were you? He said, okay, some injustice has happened to you, but all that you have been doing is to take revenge on that, and this injustice has happened to you at a personal basis, but you are harming the collectivity for your selfish interest. Something has happened to you on a personal basis, and to take revenge, you are harming the collectivity. So that is where you are not doing dharma. You have no right to harm the collectivity, disturb the collective life. So that is why you had to be killed. So he may be doing some, taking revenge because some injustice has happened to him, but he was doing it for his personal interest, not for a greater purpose. So always the greater purpose has to be kept in front. Then we know that whatever we are doing, if it is serving that greater purpose, we are on the path of right.
Okay, so there are many other questions. I will just ask a few. Riddhima Rana is asking, sir, is it important to always do our dharma, whether it is wrong or right?
We should always follow the path of right. There is no doubt about it. So that is why there is a beautiful verse in Sanskrit which says that Adhyayava maranamastu yugantareva nindantu niti. This is how it begins. Nindantu niti nipuna yadiva stubantu Adhyayava Lakshmi sama vishatu gacchatu va yathishtam Adhyayava maranamastu yugantareva nyayat patha pravichalanti padamna dhiraha. It means like whether people blame me or praise me, whether Lakshmi resides at my place permanently or lives at her will whenever she wants, whether the death comes now or death comes after 1,000 years, but Nyayat Patha Pravichalanti Padamna Dhira. Those wise people, those people, the dharmic people, never deviate from the path of right even a single step.
Thank you. So Sparsh Kaushik is asking, is Tyaga and Moksha same?
The Tyaga is needed for Moksha. Tyaga is a tool. Tyaga is the sadhana. We need to have that sense of giving within ourselves and that sense of inner renunciation for the attainment of Moksha. So Tyaga is the sadhana and the Moksha is the prapti, is the siddhi. This is the difference between Tyaga and Moksha. So one is the tool and the another is the end result.
In Gita also, Shri Arjun asks the difference between Tyaga and Sannyasa. So
one is the outer renunciation, one is the inner renunciation. That is the difference between Tyaga and Sannyasa. But both Tyaga or Sannyasa, they are the tool, they are the sadhana. We need to have in order to attain the Moksha.
Our principal Navsrijan is asking, Asha ma'am is asking, is the state of equanimity close to Moksha? The highest state of equanimity.
Yes, the highest state of equanimity is Moksha. We are in that state of Moksha.
Okay,
yes.
Very nice.
But it should not be misunderstood that we have attained that state of equanimity means everything is done. No. So the real work, real karma yoga begins once we have attained to that state of moksha, once we have attained to that state of equanimity. So everything in the world then has to be worked out as an expression of that attainment of the moksha. Then it becomes the real divine work or the real karma yoga. So that is why Krishna says, I have nothing to achieve, but I have to do it. And whatever he does from that state of consciousness. Sri Aurobindo had nothing to achieve in this world. So he had already attained to it, but he had to continue his work. So then, his work, whatever he does, it becomes a good stepping stone for others, for the collectivity, for the collective consciousness to achieve that moksha. So that is why it is said, and Sri Aurobindo himself has said while writing about Balagangadhar Tilak, he says like uh, it is not that the great deeds that he did which made him great, but but he made greater things possible for others. That is where the greatness of the great souls lies. That not only their great deeds, but they make greater things possible to happen.
Oh, very beautiful. So Shashwat Vikram Singh is asking, what is the correct meaning of moksha? Is it being free from the cycle of birth and death and rebirth, or is it to go beyond your limits?
Yeah, see, it means the same thing. Going beyond the cycle of birth and death is also becoming free from the limitation, because this cycle is itself a limitation. So becoming free from that limitation is also moksha. Becoming free from all kinds of limitation is moksha. So they are not two different things, because that is also limitation. So once one becomes free from the cycle of birth and death, one is free. One has that, like Bhishma had his own Ichamrityu. So it depends upon him when he wants to live, or in what form he wants to continue in this world, or doesn't continue in this world, because he is free.
Okay, thank you. There are two more questions.
Hmm.
One is from Jyoti Mishra. She's saying, is it okay to lie sometimes?
If it helps,
If it helps whom? The larger,
if it
the larger
helps
good.
the larger thing
Larger good.
in any manner, if it is helping, so it's fine.
Okay. Now, this is an alumni of ours, Rahul Singh. He is asking, what is the difference between dharma, swadharma, and swabhava?
So, see, Swabhava is the innate nature of our inmost being. So, it is, and then when we become aware of the Swabhava, when we become aware of this innate nature, we start organizing our, like we try to map it with our own temperament. And then we harmonize our temperament with that. So, that temperament of ours is the Swadharma. If when it is harmonized with the innate nature, then Swabhava and Swadharma harmonized, then the greatest work is done.
So, the questions are still pouring in.
Yeah.
Vartika Taneja, what should we do in the situation when speaking truth will cause harm to someone?
We should not speak that truth. We should remain quiet. So that is why the mother, she put a notice on the ashram board that if you have nothing pleasant to speak about anyone in the ashram or any happening in the ashram, keep quiet.
Sarthak Agarwal, sir, when the soul passes through various lives, what is the thing that it retains? Is it the degree of our awareness? No, this is...
See, there is, say, for example, like in every life, if we are consciously, like consciously living the life, there is some evolution which takes place to us. So it carries what has been achieved in one life, and in the next life it continues from that point.
Can you repeat that again, sir?
I said that whatever has been achieved in our evolutionary journey, it carries that, it retains that, and in the next birth it continues from that point and then moves on the path of evolution. Take one last question.
One last question. So, Vartika Taneja is asking, is it practically possible to always follow Dharma?
Always follow Dharma. It's practically possible if we have the strength to follow it.
Okay.
There are people who have followed always the Dharma. They have never deviated from the path, whatever happens to them. But that courage one has to have.
Yes.
Look at all the martyrs, look at Bhagat Singh, look at all those who have sacrificed. They have followed the Dharma to the letters. They have never deviated.
Right.
Whether the death comes now or thousands years later, they will never deviate. They never compromise.
Right.
Look at this whole story of Baji Raut.
Wow.
A boy of 12 years old. So he said, you kill me, but I will not take the boat to the other side, because if I take the boat to other side, you all will harm to our people. So they killed him. So he never showed his back. He took all the bullets on his chest, but he never deviated from his dharma.
So Prabhavati ji would like to say something.
जय सिया राम मैम।
जय सिया राम सर, बोलिए।
मैम एक उस प्रश्न उठ रहा था मन में
हाँ
कि अभी जो 4 पुरुषार्थ बताए गए, धर्म, अर्थ, काम और मोक्ष,
हाँ,
तो इसमें धर्म और मोक्ष तो समझ में आया, अर्थ भी थोड़ा समझ में आया। ये काम जो है ये कहाँ, मतलब पुरुषार्थ में, इस पे थोड़ा, क्योंकि गीता में हम लोग पढ़ रहे हैं कुछ दिनों से। अर्जुन का प्रश्न है कि अथ केन प्रयुक्तोऽयं पापम चरति पुरुषः काम एष क्रोध एष, और उसके बाद मैम 6-7 श्लोक लगातार है। आखिरी में श्लोक में कहा है उन्होंने 3रे अध्याय में कि एवं बुद्धे परम बुद्ध्वा संस्तभ्यात्मनमात्मना जहि शत्रु महाबाहो काम रूपम दुराशदम। और भी दूसरे अध्याय के भी 71वें अध्याय में आया है कि विहाय कामान्यः सर्वान्। ये सारे श्लोक कहते हैं कि काम छोड़ना पड़ेगा। तो काम यदि पुरुषार्थ में है तो ये पुरुषार्थ, तो 7वें अध्याय में भी आया है कि मनुष्याणाम सहस्रेषु कश्चित यतति सिद्ध है। तो मनुष्यपना, और ये भी बताया गया है कि जो देवता भी हैं वो भी तेतम स्वर्गलोकम विशालम, वो भी सकाम यज्ञ करते हैं तो वहां से फिर मृत्यु लोक में ही आते हैं।
ठीक है, तो आपका प्रश्न है,
इतनी निंदा की गई है तो वो काम पुरुषार्थ में कैसे आ गया, ये थोड़ा सा मतलब प्रश्न उठ रहा था।
ठीक है, ठीक है,
तो बताया ठीक है कि उसमें भी आया है,
तो सर को जवाब।
ठीक है, तो ये है क्योंकि जब ये पुरुषार्थ आइडियल को ये रखा गया या सोचा गया, इसमें ह्यूमन बीइंग के सारे एस्पेक्ट्स को लिया गया है। काम जो है, हमारे अंदर की जो कामना वासना है, उसको हम छोड़ नहीं पाएंगे, उसको रिफाइन करना पड़ेगा, उसको एक मियर सेटिस्फेक्शन जो, इसीलिए श्री कृष्ण स्वयं कहते हैं काम ऐसा क्रोध ऐसा, वो तो है हमारे शत्रु बन जाता है, बट श्री कृष्ण स्वयं कहते हैं 10वें अध्याय में विभूति योग में कि धर्म अविरुद्ध कामोस्मि। जब ये काम धर्म अविरुद्ध होएगा, धर्म काम होएगा, तब जाके ये मोक्ष की ओर हमें ले जाएगा। काम को हम नहीं छोड़ सकते हैं काम के बिना, क्योंकि हमारे जो वाइटल पावर है, जो इमोशनल सेंसेशनल पावर है, जो वाइटल एनर्जी है, उसको हम नहीं छोड़ सकते हैं। तो उसको रखना पड़ेगा, रिफाइन करना पड़ेगा, उसको एक मोक्ष का साधन बनाना पड़ेगा। और जब उसको हम धर्म के साथ जोड़ेंगे तब ये जाके अमर मोक्ष का साधन बन सकता है। इसलिए वो बहुत जोर से कहा है कि धर्म अविरुद्ध कामोस्मि देहेस्मिन् भरतर्षभ।
सर काम जो है ना, खाली लोअर तरीके से नहीं देखा जाता है। काम में एक हायर वाइटल भी होता है, खाली लोअर वाइटल नहीं होता है, हायर वाइटल भी होता है। और इस फोर्स को राइट तरीके से डालना ही धर्म के साथ में काम को जोड़ना होता है। तो कोशिश करूंगी मैं, अगर मैं मदर के वर्ड से निकाल पाई। प्रज्ञा, विल यू हेल्प इन ट्राइंग टू फाइंड वर्ड्स ऑफ द मदर, व्हाट इज द हायर वाइटल, and please find out the words and share it, okay? It will be good for you, it will be good for sir also, and then you can find the Hindi translation for him, okay Pragya? Higher vital, the difference between the lower vital and the higher vital. Thank you. Ab sir time to ho gaya, but there are more questions. If you are free then we can take these. So Pragya Upadhyay is saying, is Sankalp Shakti the will? How and from where does the will work?
Yeah, so Sankalp Shakti is the willpower. So it is connected with our, like mind. And when the Sankalpa Shakti is, like when we look at it in the Vedic term, the real Sankalpa Shakti comes from the psychic. So when the psychic influence is there in the mind, so the mental formation of any kind of resolution or anything is not the true Sankalpa. So the real Sankalpa Shakti is the divine willpower, is the psychic fire that is burning eternally within the heart of ours. So that is where it creates this sense of moving forward, taking up charges, being dynamic, and taking up challenges, moving forward like a leader who goes in front. So that is where the Sankalpa Shakti lies. Rest is just mentally formulated some kind of resolution that can be one kind of Sankalpa, but not the true Sankalpa Shakti.
Artika is asking, sir, do our actions come back to us?
Do
Our actions come back to us?
come back to us? Yes, definitely. Because anytime we do any action, we create a kind of energy field. As long as we are connected with that energy field, so it will keep impacting. So that is why, like, if some bad karma is by mistake performed, so don't think too much about it. So by thinking about it, you are getting connected with it, it will start affecting. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that do some bad karma and then forget. But somewhere, like at a certain level, some aspect of your subconscious is connected with that. So this, to remove all kinds of connection consciously.
Sir, Sudhir Tiwari sir would like to say something.
चीज आपने अभी बताई थी जब मोक्ष के बारे में बता रहे थे कि मोक्ष तो हम शाश्वत अमृतम को कहते ही हैं, लेकिन जहां पर आपने बताया कि पशु धर्म से हम सभी लोग ग्रसित होते हैं और उसी से मुक्ति पाना ही मोक्ष धर्म है। तो क्या इसी कारण से वैदिक लिटरेचर में प्रायः कई जगह मनोरभाव इस बात पर जोर दिया गया है कि प्रत्येक मनुष्य पहले मनुष्य बने, कहीं ना कहीं हम
या अपने मानव धर्म को अच्छी तरह पहचाने और विकसित करे, फिर अंततो गत्वा जनया दिव्यम जन्म, तो फिर अपने अंदर ही वही दिव्य जन को स्थान दे, जन्म दे।
तो उसका उद्देश्य क्या इस मोक्ष प्राप्ति के लिए ही है क्या?
हाँ, इसके उद्देश्य भी मोक्ष प्राप्ति के लिए ही है।
क्योंकि
जो जनया दिव्य जन्म का इंटरप्रिटेशन ऐसे ही होएगा कि हमारे अंदर उस दिव्यता को हम जन्म दे, दिव्य मानव को हम जन्म दे। पहले मनुष्य बने, मनुष्य धर्म का अनुसरण करे, पशु से ऊपर उठकर हम मनुष्य बने और फिर हम उस दिव्य जन को हमारे अंदर जन्म दे।
संभवतः इसीलिए विवेकानंद जी ने भी इसी पर जोर दिया है कि हमारा मुख्य उद्देश्य यही है कि हम मनुष्य बने।
ठीक,
धन्यवाद धन्यवाद।
तो ये वाला जो मंत्र है देखो,
जनया दिव्य मनोर्भव जनया दिव्य
मनोर्भव जनयम दिव्यम जन। तो अगर आप इसको मेरे को टाइप करके भेजेंगे तो मैं ग्रुप में भेज दूंगी, द संस्कृत एंड द इंग्लिश, then I'll send it to the group, sir. Thank you, sir.
ठीक है। Namaste to all of you. You want to say something?
Archana ma'am, please give the vote of thanks.
Oh, okay.
Sampath ji.
नमस्ते।
सबकी तरफ से आपको बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। You took us on a divine journey. There were many cobwebs in our mind, and I think when these small children can, drown in that particular divine reign, then obviously we, all those adults who are sitting and enjoying this with you, we are fortunate, we are blessed that you were with us, and we in fact are sorry that we extended the time limit, but still there are questions coming, sir. So we would be very grateful that if we could do it sometime again, but for personally me also, this was my first interaction with you, and aap sunam dhamne hai, rather I would say this only. And thank you so much from Jaipuriya family. You are family to us, but yes, what you did to us today, dharma, arth, kam, moksha, nobody could have explained it in this manner like you did. If these small children will go home with this thing ignited in their minds, in their psychic beings, they'll be blessed. So God bless us all. It's His grace that you are with us. And God see Anjali ma'am. I thank both of you, and forever we will be grateful. Infinite gratitude, ma'am, and Sampath ji too.
So a digital clap for Sampath ji, all of us. Yes, thank you so much, Sampath ji. Thank you. Thank you so much.